If you've clicked on this video, most likely you're interested in purchasing a unit like this or have one that you're having issues with. But in this video, what I'm going to do is go over the adjustments and kind of the setup that you need to have in order to make these things work to their potential. Now, I purchased my unit just a couple days ago, and I had to take it apart, clean up a bunch of rust on it, lubricate things up, and put it back together. And in doing so, I had to figure out all the adjustments. Now, online, I picked up a couple different manuals and printed them out because there wasn't one that came with this. And they were very vague and hard to understand. So I'm going to take the camera off the stand, come over here and kind of quickly go over all the adjustments that made this thing work up to its potential. All right, the machine that I'm going to be going over is this Clark Shear Brake Roller, and I believe it is basically the same thing as a Harbor Freight machine. It does have a little bit of differences, but basically it is the same thing. I took this one all apart to clean the rust off of it because it had been sitting for a couple years. And when I got it back together, the first thing I wanted to adjust was the shear to make that work correctly. Now, the table has a screw there and there that locks it in place. And underneath it has an adjuster screw there and there, and if you come over here to the side, you can see that that screw has a big washer on it, and you loosen it up to pull the table away and tighten it up to push it in. So the first thing I did was pull it away so that I didn't run the upper shear into the lower shear. But then when I put this bar back on, which serves as the lower die for the brake, and it holds the upper shear in place. But the first thing I did was lubricate the back side of this bar where it slides up against the backing plate. Let me show you that. I've got my flashlights up here to light this up a little bit. But the back of this bar against this backing bar needs to be lubricated so that it will slide up and down nicely on that. But when I tighten this up, you can get it too tight and it makes the handles work extremely hard. So you have to get them so they're just loose enough to slide between the backing bar and this bar itself. So, and these have jam nuts on the back side. And then I brought it down so that it was all the way entered in to below the bottom shear. And then I adjusted these screws on each end so that it was snug up against the upper shear bar, and tightened the table down. And they tell you to use a thin piece of paper, and it sheared that piece of paper very nicely on the, let me pick that back up, on each end. It sheared it here and it sheared it here, but right in the middle, it did not shear the thin paper very well. So in the back, there is a adjusting bolt right here where you can put pressure in or take pressure off of this. And I held this with an 18mm wrench and tightened this, probably about a quarter of a turn, and went back out to the front and I made a shear with the thin paper, and it seemed to work just fine. But it did affect the ends a little bit, so I had to go back, loosen that front table up, adjust those again, and it was a kind of a dance between the two to get it to shear all the way across. But that got the shear working fine. After getting the shear adjusted, the next thing I went to was adjusting the fingers to the bottom die on the brake. Now, those adjustment bolts are on each end of this upper bar. Each side has a Allen bolt and which locks it in place, and an adjuster bolt that gets this upper bar parallel to this upper section of the lower die for the brake. And every time you change these fingers, they suggest that you use a piece of lumber across there and push down on it to make sure that the fingers are seated up against the upper bar. But the whole idea of this adjustment is to make these two surfaces parallel with one another. And that's fairly easy. And after I got this bar adjusted, I went up to the rollers. And on the rollers, the very first adjustment is for the thickness of the steel that you're going to put through your roller. Now, I would suggest that you tighten these down all the way and then start loosening them up evenly to get the proper spacing in between here for the thickness of material that you're going to run. And over here, there's also a little pin, and you can see that with this piece right here turned this way, there's a pin going up and down to hold the end of this in. But if you push it over, it's kind of like a half pin, and it enables this end to pull away when you have a piece of round. Now here's a piece of round that I ran, and you don't have to deform it getting it off. You can slide it off and get your piece out. But the other adjustments with this are on the back side. There are two knobs, one on this side, and those are connected up to this roller. And what that determines is the amount of pressure that's going on the steel as it comes through. Now, there was another guy who suggested on YouTube, put a mark here and a mark there on each one of those knobs. Start with those all the way in so that you had pressure up against that one, and this way you can keep it even from side to side, like back it out 10 turns to start your first piece, and then gradually bring them in together in order to get the radius that you want. But that is pretty much the adjustments. Of course, you have your length of your handles. You can just loosen up that wing nut, and so you can have more leverage on the machine. On the back, this stop, it screws these bars, rods, screw into the back of the brake die on the bottom on both sides, and this stop has adjusting screws or lock screws on them. But then if you want to use it for the shear, there are holes right there and there, so you just transfer them from here down to there to use that stop. And that is pretty much it for this unit. The things that you want to keep greased is this pivot point here, this cam area. Down in here, I had taken this apart and greased the bushing in there, but you have to take these bolts out on both sides. But I greased those, and the other main area is the back side of where this slides between your shear plate die and brake die and this bar. That should be lubricated at all times. All right, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. If it was any help to you, please like and subscribe if you would. Hope you have a great day.